Okay. Um, so we're going to now discuss Western Europe, and specifically Western Europe after the Cold War and Western Europe into our modern world, which is after the Cold War, all the way up to pretty modern. So after World War II, Western Europe was wildly successful due in part to the US Marshall Plan and the fact that these countries just have historically always been successful countries, leaders in the Industrial Revolution, which ultimately has really shaped the economics of the world. They had a bunch of rebuilding to do, which created a lot of jobs. They then created the EEC, which we discussed in my last Western European lecture, and they were able to access resources of all Western Europe, help each other achieve their goals real quickly. Reviewing 1973, the EEC had grown from its original countries that started to include Britain and Ireland and Denmark. And then by 1995, you can see, oh my gosh, now this is end of the Cold War. And we're going to see that this is Austria right now, Spain and Portugal, and up here, this is Sweden and Finland, and down here in Greece. I mean, the EEC had grown dramatically and great at that time. And by 1992, almost all of Europe was part of the EEC, or all of Central and Western Europe. And in 1994, the EEC will turn into the EU. 12 of the 15 countries would give up their currency and start using the euro. This is a picture of the euro. And I got to tell you, I like it. I really do. I don't give my opinion much in this class, but here you go. So much better than boring old green American dollars. Look how nice that is. I mean, I don't know how you feel, but I would love to have a bunch of purple money in my wallet. That'd be really cool. I'll even take some red money or some blue money. That's a pretty blue, right? Okay, I should stop. Oh wow, look! Did anyone else just see what I saw? The two biggest bills are purple and gold. Hey, what's going on around here? Okay, I'm sorry. So, by the way, come on, Lakers, pull it together, but don't play AD unless you're healthy. I don't want to see you get hurt long term. Next year is more important than this year. Let's just stay healthy. I have to stop. What am I doing? Okay. By 1994, the EU had added 10 mostly Eastern European countries. This is the EU around 1994. Look at this. I mean, other than Switzerland, which is too rich to join the EU, they're just, Iceland and Turkey and some of these Eastern European countries. Almost all of Europe has joined the EU. The Baltic states, that made Russia really mad. Romania, Bulgaria, Hungary, even the Ukraine has talked about it, which is one of the reasons why Russia does not want the Ukraine to join. We heard how they had attacked the Ukraine and taken some land. This is drama, modern world drama. Let's not go there where we're talking about Western Europe today. And just recently, in 2014, the UK voted to get pulled out of the EU. In 2000. In 2020, last year, Britain pulled out of the EU. And we don't really know exactly what this means. The details still remain unclear. Okay, let's get into our conversation on the EU. And before I jump into the big three, which is what we discuss mostly when we talk about Western Europe, I want to talk briefly about some of the other countries. Ireland, you guys. Ireland, of course, part of Ireland is owned by the UK. That historically has been a problem. The Irish felt oppressed, but they're doing surprisingly well, very surprisingly well economically. Italy does great economically. Northern Italy has always been a powerhouse, but the southern half is maybe barely starting to catch up. That's where my people are from. Hey. And Spain and Portugal. Also, we're starting to see Southern Europe picking back up. Even here, like Croatia is gorgeous land. Croatia is going to get picked up as well, slowly but surely, and even some of the Eastern European countries, Poland and Northern Europe has always been kind of rich. Just look at this. And I just want to show you guys this before I move on. This is a list of what is called GDP of different countries, okay? The richest countries in the world. Now, GDP benefits larger countries with larger populations because it's kind of a total of everything made, bought, and sold in a country. Okay, but the US, China, huge countries, right? Japan, Germany, England, India, big country, France, Italy. So we can see that big countries in Europe, the big three plus Italy, are dominating in GDP. But look at this. Look at this. GDP per capita is GDP divided by population. And GDP per capita is dominated by Europe. Luxembourg, what? Little teeny baking country between France and Germany. Look at that average salary. What the heck? I'm never going to make that much. Switzerland, right? Too good for the EU. Ireland, I told you they were doing good in Ireland. It's kind of a tax shelter too, kind of shady. Come on, Ireland, step it up. Norway, Denmark, Iceland. I mean, look at that. Look at the top 7 are all European countries, mostly Northern Europe, except for the US. And these are in 2021 estimates. We can look down here at these numbers. And then, what's next? What oil producing country? That's another European, Monaco, European. Okay. Netherlands, European, Sweden, European, Austria, European, Finland, European. Okay, they do good in Europe. But let's look at the big 3 to really kind of focus in on politics and power structure and such. Okay, France. We know that the Socialist Party starts to have a surge in France in the late 70s and then the 80s. They increased the minimum wage, 39-hour work week, raise taxes on the rich. They also take over big industries like steel, space, electronics, and insurance companies. And a lot of these policies right here I highlight didn't work well. I'm very American. I'm also very Californian, SoCal, A1A. But I got to tell you, government ownership of business is not very good. It's not very successful, proven. Now, I'm not saying that government high taxes and providing more services for the people than we currently do here in the U.S. Maybe Cali style isn't better, but this one, right? When government starts taking over businesses, that's usually a really bad idea, unless they're the basics, right? Like we do here in our city. Maybe I'm Cali leaning, but they can have into the electric companies and power companies and the stuff that we need, nonprofits, right, to make everything work. Maybe even maybe medical would be a good idea, but when you start taking over like steel and space and energy generation. Well, I mean, maybe the big solar plants though are really good, like DWP. I don't know. Don't take over too many industries. Okay, certainly not your coal or your oil. You're going too far. It's not going to work. Tie clocks. When are you going to stop doing that? Every hour, on the hour. Okay, so anyway, so in 1993, we have a French conservative party who, oh, by the way, is way more left-leaning than American governments, takes over, led by a guy named Jacques Chirac. This is Jacques. But left-leaning presidents would come back in power with Nicolas Sarkozy, something Hollandaise sauce. I don't know how to say his name. I'm sorry, French people. Sandrine. And Macron, who is currently the president of France. Look, here's a little chart. I love charts of French leaders. And something that's interesting about the French, and we're going to also talk about it when we talk about the big 3, is France was one of the 2 of the big 3 that refused to join the U.S. war in Iraq. Britain does. Germany and France say no. And that really hurts the U.S. in this war. Now, Italy and Spain do, but they back out after terrorist attacks or threats of that in their country. But that hurts the U.S. I'm just going to leave it there. If those countries had supported the U.S., if they had done a better job, I mean, a lot of ifs, but boy, did that place get left in a mess. And we're going to find out that impacts Europe more than it impacts us, because let's face it, guys, if there was a mess, a country that was a mess on our southern border or close to, well, I guess you can call the Northern Triangle countries a mess, um, it would bleed into our country, kind of like the Northern Triangle countries do with the immigration and the drug cartel and such. Well, all those wars that took place in the Middle East, that's close to Europe. Specifically Southern Europe, you get on a boat, you float across North Africa. There was wars in Libya, in Tunisia, in Egypt, in Syria, US and Iraq. The situation in Iran isn't perfectly stable. Turkey has kind of gotten an authoritarian ruler. All of this has caused a wave of immigrants to start heading into Europe, which has caused kind of a problem in Europe. Europe is very European ethnically. Well, duh, right? Well, yeah, I guess so. I don't know. Is it? But even on top of that, they're very their own specific ethnicity. So you'll be like, oh, England is 80% or 90% English, and then like 5% other Europeans and like 5% everyone else. Although everyone else is gaining though, right? And the English are shrinking, and the Eastern Europeans are coming too. And all of a sudden, they're having questions as to like, are we losing our identity? And well, maybe that's why they exited the EU. Great Britain, right? That's becoming a problem we're going to see, especially in Germany. So again, we were talking about the Iraq War and how that long term has impacted Europe, because it has. And the war in Syria, really, gosh, that was a big one too. The US didn't cause that war, but what role did Obama play in that war? In the Arab Spring? Historians will debate, but most suggest he had some role. Others suggest bigger than just some. Okay, so there's France, left-leaning. And here's our middle of the big three, our Germany. The Social Democrats were elected into power in '69. We know this, Willy Brandt is named chancellor. They save East Germany, they pull it together, and economic problems lead to the Social Democrats to take power again in 1998. And Angela Merkel is elected as the first female chancellor of Germany in 2005. And she's still the chancellor of Germany. And she's really highly respected, oftentimes thought of as one of the best politicians in the world today. Interesting, Germany has both a president and a chancellor. Maybe the president's more for the country and the chancellor is more for outside the country. I'm not 100% sure on that. Merkel has led Germany to great success. They're the most powerful economy in Europe. They're probably the most powerful military in Europe. And her, and really ever since Britain pulled out of the EU, it's now France and Germany that run the show there. I mean, Italy's got a voice, but those are the big two. And arguably her voice is louder. I mean, she could be the de facto leader of the EU. Maybe I don't know if that's true. Maybe it is though. Some Germans though start blaming the immigrants for their economic problems. Boy, does that sound familiar, right? Blame the other for your economic problems, not just World War II, but around the world all the time. Here sometimes. Saying they're stealing jobs, especially since the wars in the Middle East have led to massive immigration or amnesty seeking or asylum seeking by citizens of war-torn countries. Because let's face it, folks, when there's war going on in your country, you're going to leave. You're not going to hang out. And when the rich country that you can walk to or flotilla to or drive to is Europe, you're going to get there. And the richest Eastern European country or Central European country is Germany, right? So where's your first stop? It's not Britain, although Britain had its share of immigrants. It's Germany, or it's Italy and Greece in the south as the boats are coming up. And in Germany, we're seeing neo-Nazi groups being formed, trying to get elected, getting votes. Germany, don't go down that road. Poland as well had neo-Nazi groups. Other European countries are having neo-Nazi groups forming and coming out against immigrants and getting votes. Stop. Stop now. Okay. Lastly, we're going to talk about Great Britain, and we're going to say Great Britain's government switched back and forth from 64 to 79. We know they were the first European country to give socialized medicine. They started off more to the left. We talk about Margaret Thatcher. She limits social welfare, restricts union power, and she does successfully end some of the economic problems of the late 70s, including inflation, and limiting union power. She does try to end property tax and have a flat tax on all Britons. This doesn't work, and she eventually resigns. She's still looked at as one of the best British leaders. Britain was one of the few countries that joined, that left the EU, right? I'm sorry. Britain was one of the few countries of the EU that held on to its own currency. So when all these other EU countries were using the euro, Britain was like, no thanks, we'll keep the pound. Probably because the pound was a very good, expensive, high-valued currency. But that's foreshadowing them leaving the EU, right? Okay. The Tory party stays in power, but more moderate power. The Tory party is the Conservative Party of Britain, and then they have like a Labour Party, which is the far left, and then there's kind of a moderate party. I don't know the name of it. I'm sorry. Britain was the only one of the big three European countries that supports the US in the Iraq War. We talked about this earlier under Prime Minister Tony Blair, and in 2014, the UK votes to exit the EU after a bunch of wrangling and maybe we shouldn't do this and, flash elections. Let's try and get this guy out of power. They get a guy named Boris Johnson in power, who a lot of people compare to President Trump, at least in style, maybe not in substance. His hairdo, at least, is, I don't know what's going on with it. And in 2020, they do. They leave the EU, and we don't really know the long